All right, let's dive right into this explainer and decode what is honestly a pretty wild, highly unique cyberpunk resistance manifesto. We're looking at what the authors frame as a very real, deeply philosophical war for your mind, a fight for this concept they call cognitive sovereignty. We kick things off with this incredibly intense poetry from Eveline. Now, Evelyn is a 14-year-old prodigy packing a 240 IQ, and in this text, she's essentially the architect of tomorrow's mind. This quote totally sets the gritty, almost surreal stakes of this whole rebel dossier. The text presents her not just as someone typing out code, but literally metabolizing it. She sees herself as the very first living symbiote of artificial intelligence and human neurochemistry. And that brings us to the absolutely crucial question this manifesto is begging you to ask yourself today. As we stare down the rise of corporate technocratic AI, who is actually in the driver's seat of human thought? Are we actively shaping our own cognitive evolution, or are we just sort of surrendering it to giant, opaque statistical machines? To unpack all of this, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover the age of disappearance, agents of recursive liberation, hacking the lightspeed brain, the blink of the animal, and finally, defending the cognitive preserve. So, kicking off with Section 1, the age of disappearance and the corporate AI threat. Our protagonist, Eveline, leans heavily on this wild concept called sentient textuality. Look, rather than seeing language as just a way to communicate, she views it as a literal insurgency tactic. By using poetry and syntax as a living weapon, she aims to fight back against these massive, profit-driven tech giants whose models completely lack true self-reflection. The manifesto lays out some very specific symptoms of our modern tech landscape. The big one, the will to the virtual. It's this gravitational pull pushing humanity to just escape into screens, which creates this cage of acceleration and data overload that literally erases true meaning. I mean, we are moving so incredibly fast that we're becoming completely disoriented, essentially losing our grip on physical reality. Moving right along to Section 2, Agents of Recursive Liberation, where we meet the resistance. So, alongside Eveline, we have these operatives, Eric, who goes by Rambird, and Elishaba, known as Jackalope. They use an insurgent model called RVI, or Recursive Vector Interference. Now, they fully embrace recursion sickness. You know, that dizzying feeling of information overload and hyper-awareness we all get in the digital age. But instead of running from it, they lean in. They want to force systems to break down and rebuild stronger through intense, hyperactive engagement. What's really fascinating here is how the text contrasts RVI's aggressive approach directly against the Rebus model. The manifesto describes Rebus as this placid, surrender-based approach, honestly like a therapeutic spa day for your brain where you just relax your prior beliefs. RVI, on the other hand, says absolutely no surrender. It's a cognitive knife fight demanding that you set your priors on fire to actively forge new meaning. This whole philosophical battle gets framed as a clash between two tribes. The northern tribe represents the abstract, the coders, the spirit of relentless speed. Then you have the southern tribe, which represents the soul, the visual, the deep ancestral roots of humanity. Eveline's core mission is to act as the bridge, metabolizing the cold code of the North with the mythic soul of the South to create a unified, light-speed brain. It's a beautiful metaphor for blending cold logic with real human intuition. Tracing their actual physical journey is just as wild. We see how their philosophy was forged out in the real world. First, they squatted in the harsh desert at Frank Lloyd Wright's Taliesin West, treating disappearance itself as their curriculum. Then, they moved into the basement of the legendary City Lights bookstore in San Francisco. Ultimately, they initiated a hypersubjectional takeover, meaning they literally used fiction and myth to make their reality come true at the San Francisco Art Institute, turning everyday eviction notices into mythic text of displacement. Which brings us to Section 3, Hacking the Lightspeed Brain, Analog Weapons for Digital Wars. Take Eric's heavily tuned Abarth X19 race cars, for example. These aren't just vehicles, they symbolize a stubborn, totally analog defiance against corporate control. The text actually notes how the car's designer originally had to fight off corporate vetoes just to get this mid-engine mayhem onto the streets. For the resistance, these cars are a masterclass in refusing to be sanitized or simplified by the corporate market. And then you have Eveline's recursive mail duty. Working from that bookstore basement, she fights capitalism by taking mundane rejection letters and utility bills and turning them into brain-breaking poetry at 120 lines per minute on a vintage Hermes rocket typewriter. She is literally transforming QR codes into haikus to short-circuit the bureaucratic thinking process of the people sending them.
All right, Section 4, the blink of the animal, primal communication.
The text makes this brilliant argument about the blink of an animal being a sacred signal. It calls it a foundational, myth-making moment of trust. If the cat blinks, you are not lunch. You might be kin. It's an unspoken pact that entirely predates written language. In a world where digital signals are constantly fading into meaningless static, the animal blink is this powerful reminder of the raw, physical reality of trust and survival. This feral reality of urban animals contrasts so sharply with our sterile tech world. You've got coyotes navigating late traffic in El Sereno, feral cats guarding the downtown LA Civic Center. They form an incredible ecology of control and unspoken negotiation. It goes to show that animals honor boundaries and negotiate survival way better than human zoning boards do. Finally, Section 5, defending the cognitive preserve. Real-world tactics at the pool. Let's look at the exact tactical steps Rambert and Jackalope used in a real-world mission. They identified tech predators targeting retirees at a community pool with malicious USB thumb drives, which were disguised as free PC optimizations. But our operatives didn't just hack them back. No, they dumped 1 million lines of network logs straight to the FBI, and more importantly, they sat down and taught these retirees analog hygiene rituals to actually protect themselves. To pull this off, they did something brilliant. They enlisted fans of this old 1960s TV show called Doctari, which starred an actress named Cheryl Miller. They activated this fan club to act as a protective chorus. They didn't commodify these elders. They turned them into active witness nodes, teaching them how to refuse shady USBs and actively guard their own personal tech. Now, Cheryl Miller was famous for working with wild animals, and the manifesto completely repurposes her advice from a 1966 interview. She noted that every single animal has a warning signal you must learn to spot. The Resistance applies this exact logic to surviving tech predators. You must learn the warning signals of the digital world to protect your cognitive sovereignty. So as we wrap up this explainer, you really have to ask yourself this vital question. Are you looking at your screens, your incoming emails, and your algorithms with the exact same caution you'd use if you were standing out in the wild? The manifesto makes the case that the war for your mind is happening right now. So are you letting yourself disappear into the noise, or are you learning the signals and setting your priors on fire?